Hello and welcome back to East Coast Wagering. We're a little less than a week away from the Belmont Stakes, and it looks like we're going to end up with a field of 10 horses, barring any last-minute additions or subtractions to the race. Today I'm going to go over all 10 horses, and I'm going to review each one of them and let you know which ones I think are my top contenders. I'm going to start with who I think is going to be the post-time favorite. A lot of people might not agree with me, but I think that Rich Strike's actually going to go off the favorite. He's the face of the 3-year-old horse racing division right now due to his 80-1 victory in the Kentucky Derby. It's the most visible race so far for 3-year-olds, and the big race days like this, you're going to have a lot of players in the pool that aren't weekly horse wagerers. So I think that a lot of them are going to bet on this horse and kind of sway the odds the same way we saw in the Derby and Preakness, where horses that we didn't really think was actually had much of a chance and probably shouldn't have been at the odds that they were, actually went off at far lower than what we would have expected. I think you're going to see the same case with this horse in this race, as he is the face of the division, and I think he still has this underdog appeal that a lot of players are going to like. I'm going to show you his Kentucky Derby run, where he, in no lack of a better term, ran a fantastic race. He weaved in and out of traffic in that 20-horse field and showed a powerful closing kick to run down the two favorites in deep stretch. Logically, a lot of people are going to say he ran great at a mile and a quarter, so at a mile and a half he should win easily. But that's not necessarily the case. The mile and a half is likely the longest race any of these horses will ever run. In a lot of instances, some horses can't get the distance. Also, historically, this race is not won by deep closers, and usually a horse with a slow grinding effort will perform better than those with a quick sweeping move like we saw from him in some of his previous efforts. He's training great, and maybe he took a huge step forward in that switch from synthetic back to dirt. But though I give him a ton of credit for that Derby win, and I don't think it's unreasonable to think that he could win this race, I'm going to be playing others because I'm not going to like the odds that I'm going to get on this one, and I want him to prove it again a second time before I'm really going to jump behind him. The next horse I'm going to go over is the second of 3 horses coming from the Derby into the Belmont, and that's Mo Donegal. I think that Mo Donegal is likely going to go off the first or second choice, and unlike Rich Strike, who had a kind of a nice trip as he weaved throughout traffic and got clear into the stretch, Mo Donegal lost a ton of ground because he had to go wide. Coming from the one post is never easy. I don't think that actually cost him the race, but he did lose a ton of ground as he had to circle into the stretch. Again, if Rich Strike isn't the favorite, I think it's going to be Mo Donegal, and I do think that Mo Donegal is actually going to be the favorites in the exotic polls. You can see him here in his effort prior to the Derby in the Wood Memorial, where he finished first, where he got up in the final strides to beat the Preakness winner early voting. In contrast to the Derby, where he was forced to go extremely wide, in this one he got a perfect rail run to mid-stretch where he tipped out to get up in the final strides. I think Mo Donegal has to be one of the top plays here based on his consistency. He has a win over this track as he broke his maiden here last October. Only Nest and We the People also have victories at Belmont, and many have not even run here. My biggest concern is that his pedigree does not scream out that he wants added distance, and with the short price you're going to get on him, that may be a factor you want to consider. However, I prefer the way he can grind out a win compared to Rich Strike, and though the pace doesn't appear to work in his favor, he did prove in the Wood that he can close on a moderate pace. I think 3 horses are probably going to take the majority of the money: Mo Donegal, Rich Strike, and my third one that I think is We the People. You can see him here in his last out effort, where he won impressively in front-running fashion over the same Belmont track in the Peter Pan Stakes. In this race, he faced little pressure, but he did draw off to win by 10 lengths. I will admit that immediately after this race, my initial reaction was this horse would be an absolute throwout for me in the Belmont, based on how much he moved forward in the Peter Pan compared to his absolute flop in the Arkansas Derby. Couple that with the fact that the Peter Pan was run over a sloppy sealed track, which I think carried him forward a bit. Off that effort, I figured he would be overbet and would offer poor value. However, that was before I saw the field he would be facing. If Hallingtime, or possibly Nest, don't go with him, he can get another easy lead here, and I don't see anyone else that even remotely wants to be close to the front end. This field has come up far lighter than I expected, as I thought a couple more from the Derby would enter here, including some of the horses that would typically run a little closer to the lead. Based on the field makeup, I think We the People has a big chance, and his pedigree does seem to fit the longer races. Also coming back out of the Peter Pan for a shot at the Belmont is Golden Glider, who was a well-beaten second in this race. He really had issues getting clear of traffic to make a run entering the stretch, but in no way was he making up very much of those 10 lengths, even if he did get a clear run. His other efforts include a 4th in the Bluegrass, a 4th in the Tampa Bay Derby, and a 5th in the Sam F. Davis. The Tampa prep form has not shaped up well against others, and he really didn't show enough in the Peter Pan to make me think he merits much of a look in the Belmont, so this one's really a toss for me. Next, I'm going to go over the 2 horses that are coming out of the Preakness Stakes and running 3 weeks later in the Belmont. The first of which is Creative Minister, who you can see here in his 3rd place effort in that race. He had a nice rail run to the stretch where he moved out for a late kick, though he arguably would have been possibly second had he just stayed on the rail that Epicenter ran right up. I think he's a very talented horse who is getting better every start. I don't think the distance should be an issue for him, and I could see him getting a similar trip to what we saw when he won an allowance race on the Derby undercard. My biggest concern is that this will be the 3rd race in 5 weeks, essentially following the Triple Crown race pattern, though with a shorter first leg than the mile and a quarter Derby, as he ran a mile and a 16th in that allowance race that I mentioned. He's lately raced with 4 lifetime attempts, so maybe he still has some left for this grueling mile and a half race in the Belmont, and he does offer value as the 4th or 5th choice. I like him a lot going forward in his racing career, and I will have him on some tickets, but I will be heavier on others due to the fact that he is coming back for his 3rd race in 5 weeks, and at a mile and a half, that's going to be a difficult task for a young horse. The other horse coming out of the Preakness is Skippy Longstocking, who comes out after a 5th place effort in that race. He ran okay, the same as he did in the Wood Memorial previously, but in both he just seemed to run evenly in the stretch and never really challenged. He really didn't finish in front of much in the Preakness either, as he only beat the 3 completely overmatched horses and barely nosed out Simplification, who bled during that race. I think he has the potential to sit a little closer in the Belmont because of the lack of speed, but I don't see him as a win contender. His typical flat effort in the stretch could possibly earn him 3rd or 4th finish if some others don't fire, but I seriously don't see him being any better than that. Another horse running back on 3 weeks rest, but by route of the Sir Barton Stakes on the Preakness undercard, is Ethereal Road, who you see here in that race. He ran a very nice effort in the Sir Barton, coming from well back with an early move on a track that seemed to be favoring front-end speed most of the day. That field he faced that day had no one with the talent level of some that he faces in this race, or in some of his previous efforts. I like the early moves he's made in a couple of his previous races because to win the Belmont, a horse wants to be close to the lead entering the stretch, if not in front by that point in time. But the real question is, does he fit in this company? Maybe that win will work as a confidence boost, but based on his efforts in the Lexington and Bluegrass, I like others more in this one. A little bit of a surprise entry here is the filly Nest, who comes into this race off a 2nd place effort seen here in the Kentucky Oaks, where she ran behind Secret Oath. Secret Oath has twice attempted against the boys, with only a 3rd and 4th to show for it, most recently her 4th place effort in the Preakness. There hasn't been a filly to attempt the Belmont since Unlimited Budget in 2017, and none have won since Rags to Riches in 2007. Interestingly enough, both of those horses were also trained by Todd Pletcher, who also trains Nest. This filly does have a little bit of early speed, which she has shown in previous efforts prior to the Oaks. In that one, she sat further back than usual, and rightfully so, due to the hot pace set by Ujiri and Echo Zulu, where basically no one was left around except Echo Zulu, who is an absolutely fantastic filly at the end. I think she'll be more forwardly placed in the Belmont and could possibly even be the one pressing We the People if Hallingtime doesn't go, to ensure he doesn't get an extremely easy lead. By no means do I view her as a rabbit to set up Mo Donegal, because she is far too talented to enter her for that reason. But I think given the pace that's expected in this race, she has a shot here if she does sit right off the lead and press a bit. I trust Todd Pletcher to place his horses in races where they can win, so even though this does seem like an odd spot to race her, I like her chances based on the way that the pace setup is going to be, and on the fact that I do think that she, if she didn't have a chance, then Todd Pletcher would not be entering her in this spot. The final of the 3 horses coming from the Derby into the Belmont is Barber Road, who finished 6th in the Derby. In that race, he was spotted in 20th, last of the field, for most of the race, until he finally started to make a move entering the far turn and started picking off horses. He had to fan about 11 to 12 wide into the stretch, but he did finish with interest to ultimately finish 6th place. I'm going to show you his race 2 back in the Arkansas Derby, where he finished 2nd behind Cyberknife and in front of Secret Oath. I like the way this horse slowly grinds down leaders, and I'm hoping the connections get him interested in the race a little bit earlier than they have in some previous ones. Like I said before, horses typically don't come from the clouds and want to be a little close to the leaders by the top of the stretch, if not in front. Distance does not seem to be an issue at all for this horse, and I feel like his style could fit well in this race. Based on that and the value you're going to get on him, I think he's my top long shot play. This horse barely finished behind Mo Donegal in the Derby, yet Mo Donegal will be a top 2 betting interest, while Barber Road will be around 12 to 15 to 1 or possibly even higher. Based on the value and based on the fact that I think that this race does set up well for him as long as he can get interested in it earlier, I really like this horse a lot, and he's actually going to be on most of my tickets. And the final horse in the field is Hallingtime, who you can see here in his last out and allowance race that he ultimately won on May 21st at Churchill Downs. In that race, he changed up tactics from his previous 2 races a little bit and set the pace. He held off the 4 to 5 favorite Rattle and Roll, who was closing late from far back. Both he and Rattle and Roll showed very little in their Derby preps, so this wasn't the most stacked field that he beat this day. He has 3 wins and 6 career starts now, but all 3 wins have come at Churchill. In his 2 tries away from that track, he finished 9th at Gulfstream and 8th at Keeneland. Granted, those were both the toughest fields that he's faced to date, but this Belmont field is likely deeper than those 2 races, even with it coming up a little on the light side this year. Maybe the sloppy track moved him forward in that last out effort, but as We the People was more likely to grab the lead and also ran a big effort last out on a sloppy track in the Peter Pan, I just can't find an angle to like Hallingtime's chances. If the track does come up sloppy, I may toss him in the underneath spots in my trifectas or superfectas, but I'm not going to be playing this horse on top in any of my bets. So this is how I break down the field. My top win contenders are Mo Donegal, Barber Road, We the People, and Nest. I think 2 horses could pull it off possibly, and that's Creative Minister and Rich Strike. It would be a surprise, but it's not outside of the realm of possibility. In that category, I think that only 1 horse fits, and that's Ethereal Road. And there's 3 horses that would be an absolute shock to me if they do pull this race off, and that's Skippy Longstocking, Hallingtime, and Golden Glider. That's how I see the 10 horses that are entered this year for the Belmont Stakes. Hit the comments section and let me know what you think. I'll be following this up with a video later this week once all the fields are set with who I like on the undercard races as well. If you'd like to see that in my other videos, then remember to subscribe to my channel so you get notified when I post a new video. My name is Jeremy Pielmeyer, and this is East Coast Wagering, and thank you all for watching my video.